Have you ever stopped to think about why your male friends seem to connect, well, differently than your female friends? It's
Yeah.
something we kind of notice, right? Almost a cliche.
Yeah, it's definitely a common observation.
Well, today we're going to really dig into that. We're using this really interesting framework called psychedelic thought architect.
Right, and you can think of psychedelic thought architect or PTA maybe as a tool. It's basically a method for taking apart our usual assumptions, kind of breaking them down.
Like taking apart a clock to see how it ticks.
Exactly. So in this case, we're looking at those ingrained ideas about friendship, about gender, and trying to see the underlying structures with fresh eyes. That's the plan for today.
Perfect. Because we're not just happy noticing the differences exist. The real question for us is about the fundamental dynamics, what's actually going on when people, who we often just group as men and women, form friendships.
And importantly, we want to try and look beyond those simple labels right from the start, get into the nuances.
Definitely. We've got some really compelling source material here that's already looked at this through that PTA lens.
Yeah, and our job, like always, is to pull out the most insightful bits, those sort of nuggets for you.
Okay, so let's start unpacking. One of the first things this PTA framework does is make you break down the core words, the concepts themselves.
Hmm.
So instead of just men and women as these like fixed categories, it suggests thinking of them as fluid identity clusters. What's the immediate takeaway from that shift when we're thinking about friendship?
Well, the big insight there is it immediately forces you to ditch rigid assumptions. Seeing someone's perceived gender doesn't automatically tell you everything about their friendships.
Right.
Because identity is shaped by so much biology, culture, maybe even like archetypes or rituals we pick up. It's not just a simple label.
So acknowledging that fluidity helps us avoid those broad brush, often wrong generalizations.
Exactly. It stops you from jumping to conclusions.
Okay. And it does something similar with friendship itself, doesn't it? It pushes past just, doing activities together. It calls it a relational ecosystem. I
Yeah.
really like that phrase. What makes it an ecosystem?
Well, think about a natural ecosystem, right? All the different parts interacting, influencing each other. This view of friendship highlights the deep emotional intimacy, the way friends actually help regulate each other's emotional states.
Oh, like co-regulation.
Yeah, exactly. And that feeling of real connection where you just get each other. So the insight is friendship isn't just what you do, it's how you emotionally affect each other. It's much deeper.
That makes sense. And then it looks at the verb approach,
Yeah.
how people approach friendship. It says it's not just something you do, but something you might co-create or inhabit or even transmit. How does thinking about it like that change things?
Okay, so co-create points to how dynamic friendship is, how you build it together. Inhabit gives you that sense of comfort, of belonging, like a shared psychological home almost.
Yeah, I like that.
And transmit kind of hints at how our past experiences, our learned social stuff, shapes how we connect with new people. So the powerful takeaway is, those gender scripts, the societal rules about how men and women should act, they play a part.
But they're not the whole story.
Right. They're just one layer. They're not the definitive blueprint for connection.
Okay, building on that idea of the dynamic ecosystem, the PTA framework also brings in neuroscience, right? Thinking about our brains. It mentions how some research suggests certain friendships show more activity in task-based networks.
Yeah.
The brain bits for doing things, while others light up the limbic circuits, more emotion, empathy.
Yeah, that's a fascinating angle. But then it throws in the big question.
Is it nature or nurture?
Exactly. Is this hardwired or is it about cultural permission? Like our guys may be nudged towards activity-based bonding because society says that's what guys do, while women are given more permission for overt emotional connection.
It's crucial to ask that, isn't it? These patterns we see might just be social conditioning, not necessarily fixed biology.
Absolutely. We have to keep that possibility wide open.
And then I love the architectural analogies. They really help visualize it. Male friendships as bridges, structural, functional, connecting point A to point B.
And female friendships as gardens, organic, interwoven, needing that ongoing tending and care.
The imagery is great. But what's the core insight we should pull from comparing bridges and gardens?
I think the key is seeing them as different, but equally valid and, importantly, needed forms of connection. for everyone, regardless of gender.
Okay.
Bridges give us support. They help us get over things, navigate challenges. Gardens are spaces for, growth, nurturing, complex emotional stuff. A healthy social life, like a city, probably needs both.
That's a great way to put it. It even looks way back, anthropologically speaking, thinking about maybe cooperative hunting for early men, building bonds through shared challenge.
And collective nurturing for women, maybe bonding through shared care, looking after kids or the community.
It's wild to think about those potential deep roots.
Yeah, but what's really interesting is the idea that even if the starting points were different based on those early roles, eventually both pathways led to stronger communities, better survival.
Ah, so they converge.
Right. It underlines that the basic human need for connection is universal, even if the ways it gets expressed look a bit different sometimes.
And this part always gets me looking at language. Tiny linguistic clues. The example given is bro code, which kind of emphasizes loyalty, having someone's back, but maybe without needing constant emotional check-ins.
Right, loyalty at a distance almost.
Compared with, and I hope I'm saying this right, do you culture, and just for context, unia is a Korean term, kind of like older sister, but used more broadly between women, signifying this really close, supportive, often mentoring bond. It's much deeper than just casual friendship.
Exactly, and these little phrases, bro code, Inu culture, they pack so much in, they basically encode the social expectations.
So bro code reflects maybe valuing independence, some emotional guarding.
While Ain culture points to valuing emotional presence, feeling seen, supported, cared for, it shows how language doesn't just reflect these norms, it actually helps reinforce them too.
Okay, so we're seeing these patterns stack up. This idea of parallel versus face-to-face connection.
Yeah, the spatial metaphor.
Men often connecting side by side, doing something together. Women often connecting face-to-face, talking. It's a useful image for thinking about relational styles.
It is. And that side-by-side thing can build camaraderie, shared focus, maybe without needing loads of direct emotional talk.
Whereas face-to-face often encourages that direct emotional mirroring, talking things through.
Precisely. And the point isn't that one is better, they're just different ways of relating, both totally valid.
Right. And then this concept of emotional bandwidth, the idea that maybe female-coded friendships often allow for or even expect more vulnerability.
While male-coded ones might have sort of stronger boundaries around protecting the ego.
But here's the twist. It suggests both can actually be expressions of trust. That feels like a key reframing.
It really is, because if you're sharing vulnerability, the trust is knowing you'll be held, understood. But if you're in a friendship where maybe you don't share everything, the trust might be shown through unwavering loyalty, that unspoken understanding that your friend respects your space, won't push you.
So different ways of feeling safe in the connection.
Exactly. Safety looks different in different contexts.
Even how conflict gets handled, sometimes avoidance, sometimes direct engagement gets reframed.
Yeah.
Not as good versus bad, but as different ways of maintaining emotional balance, different homeostasis strategies.
Yeah, that moves us away from judging and more towards just understanding. Some people try to keep things smooth to stay regulated. Others need to hash things out to feel balanced again. Just different strategies for emotional regulation within the friendship itself.
Okay, so pulling back a bit, we get to this kind of meta pattern. Friendship reflects socially permitted intimacy. Basically, the amount and type of closeness we're allowed or expected to show in friendships is shaped by society's ideas about gender. It feels really fundamental.
It is fundamental. Those wider societal norms, what's seen as acceptable emotional expression or vulnerability for different genders, they really do filter down and shape the private dynamics of our friendships. It's a huge external pressure.
So when you put all these pieces together, the core insight, the big takeaway, seems to be that the main difference we see isn't really about men being bad at one kind of friendship and women being good at another or vice versa. It's more about these culturally learned relational templates.
That's it, exactly. These templates that kind of guide our interactions, often unconsciously.
So male-coded friendships might often be built on shared experience, loyalty shown through actions, a kind of resilience, even if they seem emotionally understated.
Right. While female-coded friendships might lean more towards shared emotion, ongoing talk, rich verbal expression, but that richness can sometimes make them feel more vulnerable to, like, emotional static or misalignment.
But, and this feels really important, it's not about them being opposites, it's about complementarity.
Yes.
Like, these are complementary archetypes. It mentions warrior bonding, bonding through challenge, and healer bonding, bonding through mutual support. And these could exist in any friendship, right? Regardless of the genders involved.
Absolutely. Think of it like different modes or energies within connection. Warrior energy helps you face external stuff together. Healer energy helps with internal support and nurturing. Most strong relationships probably draw on both at different times.
So what we often just call gendered friendship is really more like an emotional choreography. That's a cool phrase.
Yeah, shaped by all those things we talked about: societal permission, the stories we tell ourselves about friendship, and just our individual needs in the moment.
Okay, so rather than just asking, how are men and women different in friendships? Hmm. This whole approach pushes us toward asking better questions about ourselves.
Yeah. More insightful questions.
Like asking yourself, what emotional nutrients do you actually seek in your connections? That really makes you think, personally.
It does. It shifts the focus from stereotypes to your own genuine needs. What kind of support or understanding or maybe challenge are you looking for?
And then, what relational rituals are being unconsciously replayed in your friendships? Wow, that digs deep into patterns you might not even see.
Right. Are there scripts you always follow with certain friends? Topics you always avoid? Noticing those unconscious habits is the first step to maybe changing them if they aren't working anymore.
And finally, this feels really empowering. How can you design new friendship architectures beyond these inherited scripts? The idea that we actually have agency here.
Totally. It's saying you don't have to be bound by tradition or expectation. You can actually be intentional about building connections that truly nourish you and align with your values. You can be the architect.
So wrapping this up, this whole deep dive using the psychedelic thought architect really seems to suggest that the friendship differences we often chalk up to gender are, well, less about inherent limitations.
And more about these powerful, deeply ingrained cultural templates or scripts that we all learn.
And understanding that idea of complementarity, that both the warrior and healer modes of bonding have value, helps us appreciate the diversity of connection.
Yeah, and helps us see the underlying needs for support, for understanding, for loyalty that all friendships, in their different ways, are trying to meet.
It definitely leaves you thinking about the friendship architectures in your own life. Are they actually serving your needs? Or could you maybe design some new ones that move beyond those old scripts? What would that even look like for you?
That's the big question to ponder, isn't it? What could those new architectures be?